This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening. This is February 28th, 2022, and this is the meeting of the Senior Tax Work-Off Ad Hoc Committee of the City Council. We are meeting remotely as a result of Governor Baker's order and extension of that order. All votes or any votes will be taken both orally and recorded. So this meeting is being videoed for further sharing. We have with us the members of the committee, and I don't see anyone in the general public, so we will have no public speak at this time. I don't believe we have any meeting minutes to approve. So on to today's agenda, which is discussion of the review of the Senior Tax Work-Off Program, pilot program initiated last year. Very exciting program. And I was just thrilled to see it start to move forward and the way it took off from the perspective of, well, the organizing committee and the folks who put it together. And then the ball was handed off to the staff at the city and also to the senior center. And then all the hiring took place, everything happened. And we have before us a status report from Joe Banis. Joe, if you could just start with the introductions of who you are, and then everyone else just quickly, and then Joe, I'd like to jump into that status report, unless there's some other thoughts from other members of the committee at this time.
Sure. Let me just introduce myself, and then we'll go around and get everybody. My name is Joe Banis. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Easthampton Council on Aging. And I'm probably one individual who did a lot of work related to getting this senior tax work-off program up and running. I pass.
Cindy?
I'll go next. So I'm Jen Gallant. I'm the city treasurer. And I was on this committee when it was in its infancy and helped to kind of move it along. And at this point now, I still, I track the hours so that they get reported to our payroll company so that the federal taxes are reported.
Jen? I'm sorry, Cynthia? Oh, you're muted. You're muted?
Duh. My name is Cynthia Terrell, Director of the Council on Aging. This is my first committee meeting, and my part in this is that as Director of the Council on Aging, we are steering the implementation of senior tax work-off and helping the board to report on it and have questions going forward about what the COA's role will be, what the board's role will be, and hoping that we get to continue this amazing program in the future.
Councilor Gomez.
Hi, Doc. How you doing? So my name is Omar Gomez. I'm a City Council District 2, and I'm a City Council President. And I sit probably to 2 of these ad hoc committee meetings, probably 1 or 2. But I'm new in this role as a council president and this committee. Oh, by the way, I know someone who was working. I don't remember the person of the person who was working, but I know someone who was using this program, the work at the cemetery, the main one. So, and I know everybody was happy with that person.
That's great to hear. You've had occasion to be at the cemetery and to have direct contact with the workers, so you'd know. Thank you. I just wanted to preface with a few words before we go into the report, Joe, that I was really impressed with the staff acceptance that I've seen in the program, that the staff not only just accepting the program, but embracing the program with the job descriptions and that pulling together. And that we have the opportunity here to provide meaningful work and to get work done for the community. It's productive for the community, fulfilling for the workers, and it's a service to others, along with helping to pay the bills. So it enables the city to do a little more for the community. All of this during a pandemic. So, Joe, if you could review the program and what happened, that would be very helpful. And you're muted. Too.
There we go. Just let me ask first, have most of you guys seen the draft status report that I put together?
Yes.
Jen and JP, Councilor Gomez, have you seen this?
No, yet.
Okay, and Cindy, you've seen a copy. Just very quickly, I started off, the program's been in place for about 6 months, and it seemed that it was probably about time for somebody to sort of take a look at it from a couple of different aspects and say, okay, what do we think about it? Do we know, are there any parts of it that are not working? And if it appears to be working, what are the good things that are taking place? And I have to say that speaking with most of the supervisors and a good proportion of the volunteers, the feedback that I got is that everybody's pretty happy with it. And especially, people on the supervisor side. And I was surprised also that there were a couple of folks on the volunteer side who came out and spoke about other benefits of the program aside from the $15 tax abatement. So let me just run through this fairly quickly. Long story, we ended up with 9 volunteers being matched with 9 positions in various city departments. And the way it worked is the volunteers submitted their applications, they underwent an initial vetting, and then once we then asked the volunteers to come in, who met with usually a 3-person committee, and at the start it was Brendan Rogers and myself and Tom Brown. And basically, we met with people just to talk to them, go over the stuff in their applications and make sure that they understood, and also to look at the application and make sure that, they weren't making too much money to begin with to become part of the program. And I think there was only one person that we looked at. We weren't sure whether, they looked like they might be bumping up against that limit, but then, Jen's folks and took a look at them and they were okayed. So we would just bring people in and talk to them and try to get some sense of, do they understand what the program is, and, the fact that it's a volunteer effort, and that, it's, if somebody was looking for a particular job, it was probably not the program to get into, because we had no idea, what jobs would become available at the very beginning. But as it seemed, as jobs became available, the people who we interviewed seemed to be a fairly good match. Now, granted, we're not a headhunting agency and we're not trying to, find you the perfect job, but for the most part, I think people were reasonably happy with the jobs. I was also, in talking to the supervisors, I wanted to get a sense of if there had been any problems with people, and none of the supervisors nobody said that, and nobody even hinted that was a problem. And we understand that some of the jobs are not the most glamorous jobs. You know, you might be answering phones for 8 hours at a time, or you know, doing custodial work, which is, you know, cleaning, you know, emptying waste baskets and doing other things like that. But people seemed pretty good. And once the committee met with them and, you know, sort of got a sense for where they were coming from, then the financial stuff went over, I think, to your office, Jen. And also the Corey checks were done at that time, or initiated and then done. And once they were, people passed the Corey check and the last financial thing, and if they were willing to accept the job, and everybody was, then you know, we put them together with the supervisor. I don't know that this, you know, we wanted to give supervisors an opportunity to sort of just sit down and meet with the people and get a sense for, is there a degree of comfort? And I mean, even though I don't think the supervisors would have said, you know, we don't want this person, but I think it was important for supervisors to get a sense of who the people are coming on board, and you know, getting some level of comfort with them. Cindy, you can appreciate that, I think, as a supervisor of 4 people. So, okay. So then there was a, in the document, the status report that I put together, there was a table of basically the volunteers, their job titles, the departments, and then the supervisors. Now, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I was concerned about putting people's names in this report because I didn't know how widely it would be disseminated. So I used, I made it, you know, sound like a federal indictment, you know, volunteer 1, volunteer 2, and, you know, supervisor 1, supervisor 2. We did include the departments, and basically, you know, the Council on Aging's probably got the most folks, and then a couple with the police department, couple with Parks and Recreation, and then Human Resources. We had 1 person there. The only, everything is pretty straightforward on the, you know, 1 volunteer to 1 supervisor, except for 1 position. There's somebody who's doing work on the rail trail, and the funding for that position is coming from Parks and Rec. But the supervisor that the individual is getting day-to-day guidance from is somebody who's a member of the Friends of the Manhan Rail Trail. And if I mentioned her name, you'd all recognize it immediately. So so we won't pursue that further. So just basically the supervisors I spoke with were pretty happy with the program. You know, that the people were fitting in well. They had good work ethics, and they were, you know, making some good progress and doing good work. And also talking to a couple of the volunteers, you know, what came through was, aside from the money, there were other benefits that people were getting, which were tied in with the social aspects of work. There was one lady who said that before she got this job, she had just been sitting home, you know, consistent with the COVID guidance, and that it was driving her a little bit crazy. And so when she was able to come into this position and said, I enjoy feeling part of the team there and feeling needed. You know, so we're looking at the social aspect of the program. And another person said, they are keeping me busy and I like interacting with all the different people who come by or call in. So one of the things that has also come up is that a number of supervisors asked whether it might be possible to get the same people next year, assuming the program continues on. And a couple of the volunteers said that if it's possible, that they would also like to, you know, continue in the same job. Now, we always told people that at first there was no guarantee that they would get a job, because it depends on whether supervisors want people to come in and do work. But assuming that they do, we have to be, there's a fairness issue, for if people apply to the program, they need to have an open shot. I don't think we can pre-place people into jobs next year or something. I mean, it all depends on, if the job is still there, or what jobs are available, or how many people volunteer to be volunteers. So, okay, the last thing is, we also looked at the tracking, and that's what, Jen, what you were doing, which is pretty valuable, just to try to get a sense for, there are some people who are burning through their hours, and lo and behold, there is the maximum number of hours is 111.25, and there's one individual who's gone fairly past that, and apparently is just, she's gotten into the job and continues to do the job, basically, presumably in a unpaid volunteer capacity. And who am I to say that that's not right? And if she's happy doing it, and her supervisor is okay with it, then I think, there's nothing wrong in letting, let them keep going if they want to keep going. And there are some people who may be getting a little close, but then again, some of these jobs aren't like, where somebody's working inside the same number of hours every week. If you've got an outside job, your work may be front loaded and back loaded depending on, the season and going out to do the work. Okay. I guess that's basically all I've got to say. So if anybody has any questions, we can entertain them now. Cindy?
I just want to thank you, Joe, because JP had asked me to put together a report, and I started it, and it was very casual and brief, and you took it and ran with it, and I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. Thanks.
Jen.
Yeah, that's good, great report, really. So just a couple things I want to kind of throw out there that, like, I've heard, in regards to the program. Only good things, just like you've said, everybody who's got a volunteer seems very satisfied with them. I've actually been asked if the program continues, if, like, for instance, Cindy, like, she has enough hours so that a volunteer would do all her 111.12 hours between, say, September and December. So Cindy would be, would benefit from having 2 people, but having the first person go from September to December, the second person go from January to March, or whatever the deadline is. So that's just some food for thought, that there are, positions that, if the people are willing to work the hours, I mean, they can only get the 1,500. So it's awesome that this woman happens to be continuing, as a true volunteer. But it would allow us to get more people the benefit of the tax break. So that's just one thing that came up. Another thing that came up, which this kind of is a work in progress, is for this year, the $1,500 will have to be done as an abatement. And that is because, I don't know if you remember, we had this conversation over and over and over again about the timing of the bills and when the bills go out and getting the credit onto the bill. But that was when Lori left and Randy was coming in. We had a lot of shifting going on, and that's when Val left and Hadel was coming in. So Hadel and I have been discussing it, and so it looks like for this year, it'll have to be done as an abatement. However, Hadel, myself, Randy, the assessor, and Carol are going to sit down and determine the timeline so that, because the problem we run into is we send out 2 bills at a time. So, you send out a bill so early, you don't know if this person's going to fulfill their 40 hour or their, $1,500 worth. So we're going to try to kind of talk through the best way to handle it. You know what I mean? Like, are we just going to have to do it as an abatement after the fact, and people will just have to be aware of that at the time, which means you'll have to pay your full tax bill, but you'll, as soon as it's paid, the assessor will issue a refund for that net of 15. So that's just something that we kind of need to explore more, because I know it's easier for people not to have to pay it, even though they know they're getting it back. But we also have to be able to do it properly on the bills so that we're not breaking any MGLs, in terms of how we bill people and what we're billing them for, because there are strict guidelines about what has to appear on a bill, on a tax bill. So, and I wanted to throw that out there. We haven't set up a time for the meeting yet, or a day or anything, but I wanted to talk to you guys about it, because if any of you would like to be in on the meeting, or if if we want to do another senior tax work-off meeting and just have Hadel and Randy or whatever come to it, then that's fine too. But I think that before we roll it out for next year, if that's the course that council wants to take, we kind of need to nail that down so that we can tell people if it's going to be an abatement after the fact, or if it will be truly a deduction on their bill.
Do we know, Jen, what other communities do to specifically handle that, like Northampton or any other communities?
I don't remember that we really even got that far into the conversation, because we ran into some communities who don't do the 1,500, they do less, so like they didn't have the issue of the tax reporting. That was kind of our biggest worry at the time.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so I would have to go back to my notes. I may have written notes down for some of the people and how they handled the abatements. The thing is that it also depends how you bill. You know what I mean? So like, and how it's timed. That was another thing that Hadel said, like maybe we want to figure out a different timing schedule for it so that the hours end at a time when the assessor would be able to credit the bill that's going to be going out, But again, that's something like we have to sit down with the assessor.
Originally, all that can be worked out. I was just curious.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely can. That's just one thing that's going to have to kind of shift in this next year, provided that it's approved to continue on, because I want to make sure that we get it. I want to make sure we know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and communicate it to people, because I do know a couple people finished their hours and they were like, where's my tax credit? You know what I mean? And at the time, even then I was like, well, no, you can't have the tax credit until the end of the program, until the end of the hours, the window for you to do your hours, and because we're just going to do them all at once. But that's something that we'll have to look into with Hadel and the assessor's office, and kind of just figure out the best timeline, and then kind of tailor the program to that.
That's great. Any other questions for anybody? Thank you for letting us know about the it's very much upfront, and I really appreciate that. It helps us all to understand what the issues are, and I think we understand there's complications, and we just work through them and we find the best way to make it happen. So thank you. We raised the questions about having people repeat in the position. And we raised the issue of whether someone should be allowed to continue to do the job in the follow-up year, the second year, or somebody else in the family do the same job. That also became an issue this past time. when we were discussing this. We have the issue of how much money to look for, how many positions in the future year. The mayor has asked me to come up with a recommendation to the council and from the council as to how we should be proceeding on this. I would like to just discuss those issues a bit. The amount of personnel and the guidelines for how we would handle those. Joe, you have a question?
Gosh, I was so quick on the draw. Now it's escaped me.
I'll try to be slower next time.
No, it's coming back. One of the questions that came up concerned this year. It's, these are city departments that are, through which the money is being funded. And I know in the past, the question came up about the library, whether we could get a volunteer to work at the library. But if I understand correctly, the library is not a city department. And somebody also suggested like Easthampton Media, or somebody who's involved in a lot of civic activity, whether it would be appropriate for them to get money and so they could get a volunteer. Now, I confess they didn't come forth with money and said, we have 1,000, we have $1,500 that would like to get a volunteer in, but they would like to participate as a de facto city department. So I think at some point, someone's going to come forward and make that formal request, and folks are going to have to know how they want to handle that.
That sounds like a policy question that we should likely mull around and come up with a recommendation. Jen?
Sorry, the three. I was actually going to say that might be something that we would want to discuss with maybe even our employment attorney, the city's employment attorney.
No, money.
Well, my only hang up with it is, if they're residents of the city and they're participating in the program, then and they meet the eligibility requirements, then I would love to see them get the credit. I just don't know if, because those institutions aren't specifically city departments, I don't know liability-wise how that comes into play. It would just be, in terms of function, it would be easy enough. The library, they would do the same thing any city department does. The people fill out a timesheet and then they submit it, we track the hours, and then they get, the credit off their tax bill. But I think I would just, only because it doesn't fall under, like, there's no, at least we know when there's people working in City Hall, in COA, we have, liability coverage, property coverage, and all that. And I'm sure all of these entities do, but maybe that's the ticket is, yes, they can have a volunteer, but we need to know that they have insurance in case anyone's hurt on, on their shift there or whatever. So, it might be worth a quick conversation with the attorney just to kind of see what we should ask, if we can include those departments. Are we going too far? Does it really matter if they have this insurance or not? I don't know, so just a thought.
I was being facetious. Oh no, I think it may very well be a question we ought to ask of the attorney. It would seem to me that we'd also want to include the fact that although this is a private nonprofit, it does receive funding from the municipality. And I had thought that we had given a certain amount of money each year towards a staff person, and that's how it was characterized. Is that accurate or not? Jen, I'm looking.
I don't, I was like thinking and unmuting at the same time. It's hard to multitask at this time of day.
Out of an
I
answer.
would, I don't remember, like, I know for sure that the library, we include X amount in our budget for them based on a formula, but they determine what that, like, they provide us with a budget of what they're going to do with that money. I mean, some of it is for staffing, but I think that if we did this, it would have to be, you know, it would be that they were getting, the Easthampton Media or the library were getting the benefit of having this volunteer, and the 1,500 would still come from our pot of money for the program. And you know what I mean? I think that's probably the only way we would be able to do that.
Absolutely. The money would have to be coming from the normal
Yep.
part of the program. It would be paying through the reduction in property taxes, the property tax bill.
Mhm.
But I was just thinking that as the overall question of not just any nonprofit in the community, because supporting any nonprofit could, I think at this point, become something that's just a step too far for us to do. This really, at this point, as we see ourselves in the pilot, is to take care of the municipal needs through the municipality, the various departments, and the supervisors of the departments. So I think that's our priority, but in order to fully consider any request that we might get, I think having money that we've given to the library for staff helps to make it more a public entity in addition to be a worthy nonprofit. But to have had some public direct funding from the municipal coffers. I don't know what the status is with Easthampton Media. They may be fully funded by charter. Are you aware of any funding that they get for personnel from us or directly from the city?
Well, I mean, the charter flows through us, so you could make the argument that they, you know, that they're like a quasi city department, kind of the same as with the library. The library would put on the budget, but the charter money, I'd have to look at the contract. I do believe, I mean, it's through us. So like without us, it wouldn't be happening, you know, so it's a municipal program. And I think that would probably be our, I don't want to use the word defense, but you know, if another nonprofit came along that wasn't affiliated with the city other than being located in it, you know, that could be our saving grace, is that, okay, well, the library and the Easthampton Media both, you know, have business dealings with the city in terms of our budget and our, you know, our finances. Because then it would just, we could draw a line in the sand. You know what I mean? Say,
I think that makes sense.
to be affiliated in some way. Mhm.
What also comes to mind is there had been some discussion about coordination of other volunteers and having somebody to be able to coordinate volunteers for the community gardens, because that is using municipal property. And so that becomes another factor. If the program is using municipal property, I believe this municipality is also paying for the water, minimum water usage that occurs at the site. So the municipality has a vested interest in that also. So just a nonprofit, as you say, located in the city, I don't think is something we want to pursue at this point. So I think we could make a recommendation based on 3 criteria, provided the attorney goes along. That sound like something the committee would like to have us pursue? So we could have an answer.
I think it's worth finding out about for sure, you know, and then, you know, if it opens up, if it's too murky, then maybe we say, nope, it's got to be strictly a city department. You know, I think we should at least ask the question about, you know, what it would entail for us.
That sounds good. If there's no objection, I would make that recommendation in our report.
Should we have a vote?
If there's no objection, we could probably work by consensus. If we'd like to present, if you think it would be appropriate or necessary to put in the form of a motion, we could vote on it. I would entertain a motion if that's how you so desire. If there's a second, we can vote. Or we could just check with the attorney. Which would you prefer?
I move to proceed, to take a vote in terms of whether this question should be referred to the city attorney, or is that really what we're looking at?
No, I thought we were thinking of the policy decisions, that making the distinction by having a budget process, or to have money pass through this municipality as part of the process, or
Okay.
So we had property, money pass-throughs, or direct funding of the nonprofit. That I thought was what we were pursuing. The question of going to an attorney really would be up to the mayor, but I think we could make that request. And I'd be happy to do so. Is that something you'd like to put to a vote?
Don't make me try to remember all those words.
Oh, no, my gosh.
All right. Well, so, I mean, is there a motion on the floor? Is that you agree with JP's explanation of where
Of
this
the motion.
you know,
Of what
of the motion? Yes.
Of what
Okay.
the issues are, yes.
Okay. So I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to pursue an attorney opinion on those policy issues regarding funding. Any further discussion? We'll take a voice vote then. Joe?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
Omar?
I'm gonna abstain because I don't know if I'm part of this group. I never appoint myself to be in this committee.
Wow, a technicality, we will not vote. All right.
You're looking for observer status, right?
Let's just finish with the vote and then I'll talk.
I vote yes. So that motion passes. Regarding the question of repeating, folks repeating in their position in subsequent years, is that something that we have further discussion on, or we would entertain a motion to make a recommendation regarding that? Or would we like to punt to another day to discuss that further? Joe?
I would suggest, rather than try to make a decision on it, we've still got a number of months to go. Let's punt for another day. I don't think we have to decide right this moment.
That's fine with me. I don't see anyone else raising their hands for motions on that. Let's re-examine that. With regard to the funding, I know we had the question come up of what should we do for next year. I had, in my discussions with the municipal employees who had been involved with the supervisors, it had been my sense, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, that there would be, if we had room for additional positions, and that figure were 20 personnel rather than 10 personnel, that would give us some flexibility. Maybe all the slots wouldn't be filled, and that sounded like moving from the 15,000 to 30,000. that sounded like the program was ready for that kind of a move. And was there any other further thinking on that subject, or should we move to a motion on that? Cindy. Sorry
So
if
I haven't been,
my wife is Cynthia and I call her Cindy all the time. Please
no,
correct
I go by Cindy also. One factor to consider is that the more people there are, the more recruitment, interviewing, publicizing, tracking, and so on there will be. And I'm advocating for there to be staffing devoted to the implementation of the tax work off program in addition to myself, if we're transitioning to the COA director heading up sort of the personnel end of this. And of course, all the other department heads, the HR office, everybody helps, the board members, but there could be some clerical or administrative work needed. So a corollary, a correlating plan is that I'm proposing in my budget proposal a principal clerk, and that a piece of that person's job would be to coordinate, not policy-wise, not systems-wise, but the clerical aspects of this work, that they would perform that. I totally support this program. I would love to see it doubled. We could handle more positions ourselves or be perfectly happy watching other departments and the library and Easthampton Media benefit from more positions. But we don't want to assume that any one city employee is just going to absorb the work from it. We want to plan for that.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, this is a pilot program, and I absolutely, don't take this the wrong way. I have absolutely no problem tracking the hours and reporting them for payroll and stuff, but you don't need to pay a treasurer to do that. You know what I mean? Like, that's definitely something that if someone had the time and were trained in it and knew the program, ideally that's how it should be, is there should be one person that's doing all that administrative work. And then, at the end of the year, when the hours need to be reported, this is the spreadsheet that so-and-so gave me that tracks it. This is what is in there. And that's that. So I do think it's a good idea to have someone whose baby this is.
I would certainly support that. I just don't know with the budget situation how that will play out. And I would hate to see the program that be the reason the program didn't accommodate additional personnel, or that the program stopped because we couldn't do something. I would feel very comfortable if there was some way that that principal clerk position, the coordinating duties, could be handled by one of the volunteers as the principal clerk. If it could be rolled into a budget, that would make sense. The program didn't have that. Well, we were just getting off the ground, so we didn't see what the full implications were for it. And that issue didn't come up with anyone else as we went through the various other communities, that to my knowledge. Please correct me if I don't remember properly. But I'd hate to see that happen. So I'm not quite sure how we proceed that way, whether I guess the alternative would be to say, hey, we'll just run with what we have and know that through experience we gained something. I would think that it's worthy of conversation with the mayor, but I just wanted to throw out the possibility that if it meant us not being able to accommodate, well, that could become one of the issues. Jen, I see you.
I don't think that, I don't know, like, I envision it that, well, I know for a fact, because Cindy and I have talked about it, that she's hoping to gain additional staff because she needs additional staff for specific COA business anyway. So I think it's more or less that should that happen through the budget process and you know, should there be an extra body there, then that would allow us to shift this to that person. Same thing, I don't want to see us limited on how many, you know, like not jump up to say do 20 volunteers or whatever. If, you know, if it's just a matter of this, because I can hand out now that once we know how things are working, I can hand off the hour tracking to someone else in my department. I can, you know what I mean? It's right now it is truly a pilot program. We all want to see how it works and we want to make sure that it's working properly and that we're catching everything. So I don't think that it's like a deal breaker if we can't have someone, but I do think, to speak to what you were saying about having a volunteer taking care of it, I think that that's risky only because you got to retrain somebody every year if that person doesn't come back, or if we determine that we can't have people repeating in their roles and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, it's not rocket science, but, you know, how long is it going to take to show someone who's only there 4 hours a week? You know what I mean? Live somewhere. If it's going to continue on as a program of the city, it needs to live somewhere. And wherever that ends up being, you know, it has to be factored into one of that department's employees' positions.
Fair point. I think that's well stated. And I guess another way to look at it in terms of the number of personnel is that if that decision of whether or not to recommend the expansion of the amount of money, the amount of funds, and the potential positions is to really look at them as these really are potential positions that we would run the pilot given the current amount, the 10 positions, and that we would go to 20 if everything else could kind of work out, that we would request that those funds be there. We would request that there be a portion of clerk position be utilized toward that management function. And that would help the program to run smoothly. Should it not be able to be managed, then one would say, okay, well, we just can't fill that many positions. We can fill X. And that doesn't mean necessarily that the demand will necessarily be there for all 20 positions, should that be our recommendation. There may be 10 or 12 or 15, I don't know. I would be surprised if we didn't get the requests from the various departments. We are coming up at 6:55. I'd like to see us wrap up around 7 or so, if possible, unless there's any particular desire to continue. So I also wanted to just mention the fact that we were looking at, I believe, keeping the program's financial requirements in place for the most part. For there was an eligibility requirement. However, I was very fond of the idea of having some flexibility in that number should we find the city, to give the city the opportunity to have additional personnel or a particular job that just wasn't filled by anybody who met the eligibility requirements financially, but otherwise qualified in terms of the program's requirements. For example, the cutoff is going to go up a few $1,000 or $1,000, whatever it's going to go up. I believe it was in the low 60s. If somebody who made, let's say, $67,000 a year came in, they wouldn't be able to fill a position currently. So the thinking was that I would like to put on the table is that if we were able to have a couple of positions that we could have available for that kind of a situation where somebody didn't meet the strict income guidelines as we currently set up, because the program is designed for the most part, and our desire had been to make sure that the folks most needy got the credits. Well, as folks find out that their incomes are fixed, or tend to be fixed for the most part as they enter their senior years and then age up, they find a tighter squeeze, but they might not just meet whatever the guidelines are set. So I would like to consider the possibility of having a small percentage, perhaps two positions, be available for that possibility. And if they're filled with folks who are eligible financially, I wouldn't have no problems if we had 18 and we wanted to make it to 20, that those, okay, they get filled up. But if we had 18 and then 2 positions were available, they didn't get filled, but somebody else could fill them, and it met the criteria. This is a pilot program, and I think there's room for that kind of possibility. Joe.
One thing that I became aware of, and I think it was the Tina, who runs a program over in Westfield, was the one who made me aware of this. The source where we get, the annual income figure, for like 1 person and 2 persons, it comes from a HUD publication.
Yes.
And if we use the updated HUD publication every year, those figures are automatically adjusted for inflation. So basically, we'll never get to the point, as long as we use those inflated numbers from HUD, we'll never get to the point where people will find out that, they got a 5% Social Security increase and now they make too much money to participate in the program, because those HUD figures automatically escalate, every year. So I think if we just make it a practice to continue using those HUD numbers, we won't run into this situation where people suddenly find out that they're making too much to participate.
Well, that would certainly, we're using the HUD numbers, that's for sure. And we were using them in part because there was some thinking that we could use CPA funds for the program. And that's where this all kind of got going, was that the CPA criteria was that you had to be at or below this particular figure. And it's a reasonable figure in terms of having an eligibility requirement that kind of escalates a little bit. The really question is, what if you don't fill the position with folks who meet that criteria? If there were some flexibility, this would give program administrator the opportunity to say, okay, she's a great person, great position, don't have anybody to fill it. I'd like to feel free that we could say, okay, they make a little more money, but let's use them in that position this year. And if there were a couple of positions designated like that, that would leave 18 with the numbers we're talking about on the table for folks who definitely would meet those financial criteria.
I think there's a potential for a rub if certain volunteers are. Now let me just clarify, we're not talking about adjusting the amount of the abatement. That's pretty much going to be a fixed thing.
That's correct. The abatement is fixed for everybody. That's
Yeah.
the abatement.
Okay.
That's it. This is the eligibility requirement in order to participate in the program.
Hang on a second.
Cynthia, if I may.
I don't know if you've already talked about this and not to discuss it tonight, but for a future agenda, I know some communities also prioritize the class of veterans for these positions. And I don't know if you've talked about that here, but that could be another potential pool of people of any adult age.
We did in fact talk about veterans, and we did find that that became outside of the senior tax work-off program. And we really wanted to get this senior tax work-off program off the ground at this point. If we're talking about an additional staff load, that would add even more folks to the program. So we were trying to go slow, but you're absolutely right. And I think there could very well be a veterans tax work-off program allowed. So coming up, we're after 7 o'clock. I don't know if we're going to come to a resolution on this. We would like to make a report to the city council come April, probably the second meeting in April. That would be our hope, Councilor Gomez. And that would then give the mayor, the council, an opportunity to go ahead and make a recommendation to the mayor, hopefully endorsing the recommendation of the committee. Does that sound like a reasonable time schedule for you, Councilor Gomez? I see the thumbs up. Okay. Do we want to go ahead and look into the matter that we're going to look into regarding where we can place volunteers, and then meet again in, say, a week or two? Does that sound like a reasonable plan? Okay. Do I hear it for 1 week? Do I hear it for 2 weeks? 2 weeks, 2 weeks. I see two. Are those victory signs? All right. 2 weeks. That sounds good. So what is 2 weeks from today? 14th? Is that? My calendar's not populating here. All right, there we go. 2 weeks from today would be the 14th. Does that sound good for everybody at 6 o'clock? Or would 7 be better? 6, everybody for 6? Sounds good. So 6 o'clock on March 14th. And is there anyone who'd like to have me talk with them about the attorney question? Jen, you were very much involved in discussions of the attorney. Is Jen? Would you feel comfortable with me posing the question?
Yeah.
To the attorney? Anybody else?
I don't have a problem with that.
Anybody else volunteer for the role? Not seeing any hands jumping up here, folks jumping up. I will go ahead and do so. So hopefully I'll have a report for you back in 2 weeks. And I think we still have a few outstanding questions, and I will also hopefully have some time to report to the mayor, just a sense. Very good. I would be happy, if there's no other further business, to entertain a motion to adjourn. See a hand, Joe, but
So moved.
is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second. We have
Second.
All right. No further discussion. Joe?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
JP, aye. Omar, thank you very much for joining with us today. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, JP.
You're very welcome.
You're a good facilitator.
Oh, gosh,
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.